Once you've exported your print file onto a thumb drive, what you're going to do is come over to one of the 3D printers that's ready to go. And at any given time, these 3D printers should be already calibrated, should be loaded with filament. To essentially, all you got to do is turn them on, load your print file, and print. Now, each of the printers at this point is going to have different color filament in it. This one's got yellow, that one red, this one black. Some of the other colors are loaded in the printers down on the other side. So if color is a big important factor in your print, then just try and get the open one with the best color for you. Now that said, these printers here are off. We do have one that is on, but these are off. So how do I turn it on? Well, on the left side there's a toggle switch near the back, and if I feel over here right next to the cord, there's a little toggle switch. Now I've turned it on before, I know where it is, so let's show everyone else. If that doesn't work for you, you can always come around the back and flip that little toggle switch right there. You will know it's on because lights will start lighting up, and in the first few minutes after the startup, after it runs its initial diagnostic startup program, whatever you want to call it, it's going to give you a little jingle, a little beep telling you it is ready to go. This one I turned on just a minute ago, so we don't have to wait. I'm going to take my thumb drive, I'm going to go ahead and load it in the USB port, and now I'm ready to access my file and print. Now if we look at the main menu here, print is the first option. Filament, this is to load and unload filament. Preheating, what it does is it preheats the extruder. As you can see, it's at 23 degrees, 22 degrees, which is probably room temperature. It's going to take a little while to get started, so part of the print process will do that, but there are times where you would want to preheat beforehand. Most of these options we're just not going to mess with unless we're out of filament and we're changing it, and I'll help you with that. So we're going to go to our print file, and we're going to want to select the USB storage. We're not going to use the internal storage. And it's going to take a minute to pull up the contents of the USB, and actually the more files you have on your USB stick, the longer this is going to take. So I do recommend deleting the files that are on there unless somebody specifically asks you not to, but hopefully they've already saved what they're working on. So I know the name of my file. It's important you remember yours so you can go click it. Now I have some options here, but I'm just going to print, and it does give me an estimated time and a little picture of it. So now it turns red once I've asked it to go ahead and print, and I didn't mention it, so I'll say right now, when you push down on the knob, it's essentially the enter button, and when you click this button, it's the back button, and that's how you navigate the menus. As you can see, the extruder is starting to heat up. You'll see the degrees Celsius are constantly going up, and now the printer is starting to do its initial pre-print calibration. It's checking zeros, edges, and once that extruder heats up, it is going to start printing. But if the printer hasn't been run in 30 minutes, it's going to take probably 5 minutes for that extruder to heat up. Now that said, you don't just want to go sit down at this point. It's actually important that you stay with the machine in case there's any errors, because a lot of times that's the time the machine gets damaged, is when the machine's banging against something or it errors out and there's no one there to cancel the process that it's doing. So I need you to stay here until it's printing, and even when it's printing, you're going to have to check in and make sure that you know, one of several things didn't happen. Sometimes what will happen is the object will come loose from the base, and when that happens, essentially the plastic object will get stuck to the extruder, and it's just going to make a big mess. There's other things, maybe if your print quality is just terrible, well, you just want to cancel it and figure out what the problem was and start over. So you got to keep checking in, and it's even okay if you pull up a stool right here and just watch it print. That's perfectly okay. Now once it prints, or once it starts printing, you're gonna see it. If there's an error with the coding, it's probably not gonna print. It's probably gonna get into position where it normally starts printing, and then it's gonna give you an error message. It's gonna beep a couple times, and it's gonna cancel the print by itself. So that is something that is another reason that you need to stay at the printer and see what's going on. Now, before you start printing, one good thing to do is always pull off the board and clean it. We should have some, we will soon have isopropyl alcohol available to degrease the build plate, because when the build plate starts to get oils from the skin or any other dust or dirt, what it does is it keeps that initial base layer of the model from sticking, and that's when it can have problems of becoming unstuck from the build plate, which is a bad thing when you're trying to print. So that's pretty much the basics of how to get started loading your file into the MakerBot, how to begin the print process. Each object, each time you print, things can happen. It's just important that you're aware of what's going on, if it's printing, if it has a problem. And when you run into those problems, it's a good idea to go talk to your instructor and figure out why it did that so you can correct it. Now, I'm sure you just heard it beep a few times. It kind of gave this little beep beep beep, and now it starts printing. The MakerBot, one of their little things is they notify you what's going on with the series of beeps. So everything looks good, it's printing, it didn't cancel out. It's probably going to start building that raft on the bottom first. And I can always check the status of my print by checking the LED screen. As you can see, I've got about 30 minutes left, 2%, and those little dots on the bottom left tell me I have other screens I can look at. This is what my final product should look like. This is telling me my file name, print time, and how much material I'm going to use. Layer height, infill shells, supports, rafts. These are parameters for the print, and you can check that if you want. The extruder temp for these machines is generally 215 degrees. Only on custom prints will we go change that, but generally that's where it's going to print the best. Now that said, we usually leave it on this screen so we have a status report of how long it's going to take. Now, one thing I just want to note is sometimes the time on here is not accurate. Sometimes it says it'll be done and it'll still take 10 or 15 minutes to print. So if you're waiting for that 30 seconds after the bell for your object to finish printing, it may not print. Probably just have to come get it another time. But lastly, once your print is done, hopefully within your period, the last thing is to clean up when you're done. There's usually some little pieces of plastic kind of sitting on the build plate. You're going to want to clean that off, reinstall it so the next person can come up and start printing.